On the 11th, a most terrible storm arose, so they were obliged to lash the helm and tie to for 25 hours in the middle of Lake Ontario, and expecting every moment we would go to the bottom. May this day never be forgotten by me. John Stewart.
When I first read this story a couple of videos ago when I did the scanning, I wasn't certain if I was directly related to John Stewart. He had a daughter named Catherine who did marry Andrew Nelson, who was a son of John Nelson and Janet Weir, which this whole book is about, them and their descendants. Well, it turns out I did some checking and I am related to them. So when I read this story, it's pretty amazing to think that my third great-grandmother, Catherine Stewart, with her siblings and her father, John Stewart, my fourth great-grandfather, were on this ship. In this video, we'll be diving into the details of this particular story and seeing if I can extract the dates and times and places, maybe even the ship's name, find some other supporting evidence for this particular story. Figure out who else was with him on the ship, which of his daughters, was his wife there? I'm not certain, but I'm going to copy all of this into a family history research report, and then I can start picking apart the details and asking the research questions. So in this video, I'm going to show you how to do that, and then we'll do some research together and see what we find. Welcome to week 4 of the Neilson-Nelson Kith and Kin. Let me show you where John Stewart fits into the story of the Neilson-Nelson Kith and Kin. Let's zoom into this family tree and take a look at the right-hand side of the screen. At the top, you'll see John Nelson and Janet Weir. Those are the ancestors, the first couple in my cousin's book, Neilson-Nelson Kith and Kin. And then you see Andrew Neilson, or Nelson, one of their kids. Here is John Stewart and his wife, either Jean or Jane Cunningham. I need some more details on this woman. And their daughter, Catherine Stewart. Catherine marries Andrew. They have a child, Andrew. He and his wife have a child, Hugh. Hugh James or Jim. Jim and Maggie have a child named Mary. That is my paternal grandmother. So that's how this all fits together. Let's jump into the document and take a look at what details we can get out and put into the family history research report. All right, so we're getting into this one pager, and I'll zoom in a little bit so you can see it a little bit more. Let's go into this view. All right, we're zoomed in here, and if I scroll down, this is the entire story. Let me zoom out, sorry. There's the whole story. One page, less than one page. And in fact, the first paragraph was written by my cousin Gail. She says, this extract is included because it gives an account of a voyage from Scotland to Canada that took place approximately a year and a half after the Neilsons sailed. So this is 1820, as we see by the next paragraph, and we think the Neilsons came in mid-1818. Then Gail says, also the two families were neighbors and Andrew married a Stewart daughter. Well, we already covered that. Then it gets into it. But if I scroll down and if I go to the next page and the page before, there is no reference to how she got this information. So sometimes when you're looking at documents and there is either an assumption or a description, especially if it's in the author's hand and not in the original hand of the person who is reporting it, sometimes you wonder, is that accurate or not? Now, I have good faith in my cousin Gail. She's passed on. But as I mentioned in one of the first videos, she's written books that are historical family documents. And so I trust that she did pick up this source from somewhere. I don't know if it was in her possession. I don't know if it was in a different record, if it was at a library. I just don't know. And I think because this was a draft, she did not put any reference in here at all. So I trust that this journal excerpt is legitimate, but sometimes you'll come across information, you'll wonder, is that really the story? Is that really how it went? Are those really the people in my family? And so it is fun to take what we have here, copy it into a research report, and then start checking the details. What can I find out about, for instance, this first line right here I think is great information. June 12th, 1820, sailed from Greenock, that's on the west coast of Scotland, on board the Duchess of Richmond. Boom. And then there are other dates and times where arrivals happen. There's the storm that I referred to. So my goal in this next part of the video is to copy and paste this into the family research report and then start to pick apart those details and see what can we verify. Can we find the original? I don't know, that might be a stretch. But can we take some of these details out and see if there's other supporting evidence that's out there on the modern day web that my cousin Gail might not have had access to? All right, so let's get set to copy this information into the family history research report, start pulling out details. All right, I first want to give you a rundown of what a family history research report looks like. This is how I format them. There may be better ways, but this is how I've been producing them for a couple of years. So at the top, family history research report, and then this is the working title, Journal Excerpt of John Stewart, 12th of June, 1820, 15th of November, 1820. These dates, we've already seen this date, 12th of June, 1820, in the scanned image. And I'll tell you how I got this date when we're done. So this is not the span of his lifetime. This is just the span of the excerpt from his journal. Section A is just the overview. Client is myself. I'm not doing this for another person. The date that I started this report. The subject is John Stewart. That is the person of interest. The contract, again, I'm doing this for myself. So all of the analysis, the research, and the reporting are on a pro bono basis. I'm not paying myself, obviously. And then I have the problem statement. So this is the part that helps scope what the research report is about. Instead of putting all of the data into a spreadsheet or into a long Word document that you've kept for years, and then you get kind of lost on what you're trying to find out about this person, I'm trying to scope this just to the transcription and then the exploration of the details of John Stewart's journal extract. So I might veer a little bit into how many children were alive when he was on that ship and in that storm. Was his wife there or not? We might not have those details. I'm probably not going to go into his parents and his place of birth unless I have those at the ready, either through previous research or if I kind of stumble upon something. What I am interested in is capturing the transcription and then exploring those details. Again, the dates, places, and events that happened. So the background, this particular report is part of the Neilson-Nelson Kith and Kin project. So my intent here is that I could have a lot of these reports, maybe from the narrative, maybe from the narrative of John and Janet Nelson and their family, maybe from some of the descendants. There are some other narratives besides just these few at the top of the document, of the manuscript, that are also interesting and might have some details. So I'm putting that as the background. The information about John Stewart's journal is found on page 16 of the manuscript. That was from Gail's book, manuscript. But I put a to-do here that I might have more background information. I'm not worrying too much about it right now, but I might go and review this again. The summary of findings is TBD because I haven't really done any detailed findings yet. So I'm going to work through each of those detailed findings, and then when I'm done them all, and that may include adding more information in this report that's not in that one-pager, I don't know if it'll include any photos. I just don't know yet how many findings I'll have. But when the findings are completed, then I'll summarize them and put them in the summary of findings. So if somebody just wants to look at the front page, or if I'm just looking, in 3 years' time and I want to refer to this again, I might just look at the summary of findings and then go back and say, oh yeah, now I remember the details. Now what I'm going to do is line up the screen so I can see the text and this document, and I'll start copying it over and doing the work to get it in place. All right, so on the right-hand side of the screen, I've got my document open, and I'm using LibreOffice as the software. It's like an open source version of Word, and I've got my research report lined up. On the left-hand side, I'm in PyCharm again. I'm looking at the image, but I've also opened up the extracted text. So a few videos back, and I'll put a link below, I did the work in Python to look at all of the images and pull all of the text, and I did it by page. So this same image file has a corresponding text file, and it's got all the text there. So what I want to do now is set up my first detailed finding to be the transcription of the journal, just can't type when you're watching me, of the journal entry. Wow, not typing well today. All right, and then I do want to just set up another one, and there's the D2. So right in here, I'm just going to copy and paste the whole journal entry. This first paragraph here was written by my cousin Gail, so I don't need to include that. But I will take this June 12th all the way down to thank God. Now, there's another line here at the bottom that says John Stewart, born Kilbarchan, Renfrewshire, 1787. I don't know if he wrote that. I don't know if Gail added that. So, and this is an extract. So if it was part of his original journal, like in a small booklet or something, he may have just turned the page and kept writing. Or did he write his full name where he was born? I think this might have been Gail's work to put his name at the bottom. So I am just going to copy the narrative only and paste it into here. Now when I go to paste, I'll say edit paste special unformatted text. All right. And that is the transcription. Oh, sorry, scrolling too far. D2, I want to put in the scanned image of page 16 of the manuscript. And I will get that ready in a minute. But I want to go back to the text. So it's important, especially if you're doing OCR, to make sure that each word is correctly transcribed. For instance, on this June 20th, I'm going to pop this up a little bit here. And I can scroll over. So June 12th, 1820. Let's get that right at the top. And let's get this right at the top as well. June 12th, comma, 1820, comma. Great. Sailed from Greenock on board. Sailed from Greenock on board. Scroll a little bit here. The Duchess of Richmond, period. Duchess of Richmond, period. On 14th, then you see where this properly put a line break, but I don't really want a line break there. I might be able to get another word in that line and have it flow. Anchored at Crinan to take on passengers, period. Then the next line says June 21, sailed from Crinan. And look how this typing in here has a small c for Crinan, and it did it here. Again, I don't know if this was in the transcription, in Gail's typing it out. Maybe Gail copied it from another typewritten source. Maybe she forgot to put in the capital C. Maybe she kept it as a small c because that's how it was in the record she was reading. It's hard to tell. I think Gail did a pretty good job at keeping things the way they were, but it could have been a typo on her part. I'm going to give her the benefit of the doubt and that she read it that way with a small c, and that's how it is. And then it goes on, 22nd anchored. And so now the challenge is basically to go through each line and make sure all of the text is exactly the same. And I'm also going to get rid of the new lines. I'm putting the cursor right here in front of anchored and hitting delete. And that brings it back up a line, and then I'm hitting space. Now what that did, because of the way this document is set up, is it put TH as a superscript. I have to make a decision at some point whether I'm going to do that, or like in the original, it was not superscripted. I should probably try to do it without superscript. So I'm going to type TH and see if I can get away with that. There we go. Kind of cheated a little bit there. June 21st, sailed from Criden. Now that does look like it's on a next line, like that. I'm not sure, again, if it was supposed to be a full paragraph break or the next line. I'm going to keep it like this for legibility. And here's why. I've looked at old journal entries, my father's, my mother's, others, and oftentimes if it's the person writing firsthand when it's happening, they just write the date and then start writing. And that kind of follows the pattern here. June 12th did this. Now, on 14th anchored, that's part of the same paragraph, but maybe he was writing this on the 14th and said, yeah, we started out on the 12th and today's the 14th anchored. Then a week later, June 21st, sailed from Criden. On 22nd anchored at Oban. So I am going to do that through the whole document. Check for line breaks, fix the line breaks, check for spelling, punctuation, capitalization, superscripts, etc. And let me get through all of that and then we'll come back. So I got through that. It looks pretty good. There weren't too many errors. There were a couple of punctuation marks based on some ticks or marks in the scanned image that weren't actually punctuation. So got rid of those. It looks like all of the capitalization worked out pretty well. And then I just did the new lines and got it into a flow. So let me show you where that is. Oh, there we go. All right, so there's the flow, that's the transcription. So the next step is to put in the scanned image of page 16 in the manuscript so you can read it and you can see it. And then I'll move on to my next finding, and I think in that section I will break out the timeline of where he is on which day and what is happening on those days, because he does mention a lot of dates and places, which I think is pretty cool. All right, let's get ready to do the other image into this document. To do that, I am going to go into, let's see, I may have copied that out already. Yeah, so this original that we're looking at, this document that we're looking at is a PNG. I made a copy of it already from the TIFF file. I can't drop a TIFF image right into this document, but I can drop the PNG. So let's try doing that. All right, so we've got the scanned image in, we've got the text of the scanned image, and then I think it's time to go through some dates. So let's do that. We'll make a new section below here. And in this case, I want to insert a table. There we go. So date, location, and notes. I'll put these in bold. Okay. The next step here is to figure out the dates. So we know that it was June 12, 1820 that he sailed from Greenock on board the Duchess of Richmond. So for these dates, I think I would like to do 12th of June, 1820, something like that. This font I'm going to have to take down a little bit. Maybe take it down to 10. The location is Greenock, Scotland. I might get a little bit more specific. I might include the county, or is it called the county? Yeah, the equivalent of the county. And then the note is sailed on board the Duchess of Richmond. And then we get to use this note in another finding when we try to figure out more about the Duchess of Richmond. All right, so that's how I'm going to do these. Let me just work through the details there. Well, that was amazing. As I was filling out this table with the dates and times and places and the actions that were happening, wow, a lot of respect for the struggle of emigration. What an amazing trip. I mean, reading it in the table format with the back and forth and the struggles and the days in between, I mean, there was only really one entry about the entire month, more than a month, of being at sea. That was just a line in this table. And then all these other steps, leaving his kids in places and going to try and figure out which land he's going to be able to get. And then finally getting into their own shanty after that many months of travel and emigration. What an amazing story. I think what I'll try next, in my next finding, I'm on D4, finding 4, is try to plot these locations and see just kind of what it looked like big picture. And then they get to this place in Otonabee, where for me, like my immediate family history, visiting those gravestones, visiting with my grandmother when my great uncle Fred died, and being there in the church in Keene, traveling the dirt roads up and down the hills to the old farm where Jim and Maggie Nelson were. We haven't even got into that whole story yet. This just connects it that much more to one line of my ancestry about the travel and travail that they went through to get where they were. Just an incredible story. So we'll see where this brings us, and next time we'll take a look at the mapping of these places and see if I can find any hints about the ship or the voyage or the ports or some of these locations. I think the cities will be okay. Will I be able to find John Nichols' lot? Could he have ended up in southern Ontario, further down Lake Ontario, like Hamilton or York or Toronto, as it's now called? I don't know. I think these are fascinating. So thanks again for watching, and see you next time on the Neilson-Nelson Kith and Kin.